At the talks on Sunday in Geneva, the Syrian opposition delegation said they were trying to secure the release of women and children.
Discuss a limited ceasefire, limited aid delivery for homes.
UN Peace Envoy to Syria, Mr. Lakhdar Brahimi, said the weekend talks focused on what he called confidence-building measures aimed at establishing a positive atmosphere before more difficult political talks. But it has been a long road getting to this point.
Major concern that I've always had about international community, when a problem starts, they know it. When the crisis is rising and escalating, they know it. They sometimes don't do anything until something gets out of hand, like Syria now. But it is the same international community that contributes the money and all the goodwill that they give to these same people. It's, to me, wickedness. So what are you looking at when the crisis starts, and you know the potential of this crisis? You know the domino effects of this kind of crisis. Of course, we're already seeing them. You know, Jordan, even up to Iraq, for God's sake, people are going to Iraq as refugees. So that goes to show that, look, these people are pushed to the precipice now. So international community, to me, I don't know. It's very unfortunate that they have this kind of attitude, because they should have been able to stem the tide of of war in the first place. They will not do it until it has escalated to this stage. They'll not be spending money to feed people. You see people running. To me, it's hypocrisy.
Thousands have been killed in the fighting, which has escalated to a civil war, evolving from one stage to the other, including the use of chemical weapons. Analysts say the Syrian situation has become more complicated. With atrocities committed on both sides, it has become more difficult to say who is at fault. And with neither side unwilling to budge for so long, even a solution to the crisis looks dim.
If Assad is not removed from power, it will not augur well for the opposition. Our opposition is in the majority, and if the majority is not given, political right to exercise, of course, it will not go well for the future of Syria.
The violence has also driven about 9.5 million people from their homes, creating a major humanitarian crisis within Syria and for its neighbors.
Fun, inspiration and knowledge. That's what you get from readers, writers, publishers, and the entire book world. Get some interesting reviews, events, interviews, and latest updates from the book world. The channel's book club, inspiring you one page at a time.
Well, it was called the Arab Spring for a reason. It was not just in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Syria. What started with the self-immolation of Mohamed Bouazizi in Tunisia soon spread to Oman, Yemen, Egypt, Syria, and Morocco. While things seem to have settled down somewhat in most of these countries, Syria is still very much in the news. But it's been 3 years, and Tunisia, Egypt, Libya are yet to experience political stability. It was 3 years ago when the political scene in the Middle East took a different turn. Within 2 months, the will of the people became law, from Tunisia to Egypt to Libya. The whole world stood by and watched. They commended the people for taking their destiny in their own hands. Over time, it became clear that the freedom they sought for will not be easy to maintain. The Transitional Council in Tunisia eventually resigned. The presidential elections in Egypt were faltered. Mohamed Morsi, accused of following the agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood and faces a court trial like his predecessor, Hosni Mubarak, and Libyan rebels were found to be perpetrating crime in the country. 3 years later, these countries are still going through the pains that come with nation building. The Tunisian parliament has only just adopted a new constitution, the first since ousting President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. The National Constituent Assembly passed the text by 200 votes from 216. Analysts say politicians hope it will send out a message of stability after months of deadlock between Islamist and secular forces. However, governance remains a problem. The country's new Prime Minister, Mehdi Jamar, on Sunday was forced to delay naming a caretaker government to lead until elections after failing to reach a consensus over the key post of Interior Minister. Jamar had planned to present his cabinet before the president on Saturday, but just after midnight, the premier said at a news briefing that there was no consensus over the cabinet list and he could not name the government. It's been considered a setback for Tunisia, especially with the constitution passed. Meanwhile, governance has also been a challenge for Egypt. The democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, was toppled last April.
Morsi became the president. He then started to rule by decrees. I mean, people seem to have forgotten how he brought in a decree that disenfranchised for 10 years the people who are served or who have been associated with the previous regimes. He had had clashes with the judiciary, and there was absolutely no doubt that he was behaving he himself was starting to behave undemocratically. I even remember one episode that led to the resignation of one of his own office holders when he appointed as governor of a province a Muslim Brotherhood man who had engineered the killings of tourists in that province. So he wasn't running an all-inclusive government at all. A government that claims to be democratic must not only be brought into power democratically, it must continue to behave democratically.
But while many still celebrated another anniversary of the uprising that began in Tahrir Square, violence broke out in Alexandria, Egypt's second largest city. Hundreds of supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood marched in Alexandria, chanting anti-military slogans and demanding General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the interim government step down. Shortly after, pro-Muslim Brotherhood supporters clashed with riot police. There were also clashes reported in Cairo. Security forces used tear gas and fired into the air to try to prevent the protesters from reaching Tahrir Square. Egypt's interim president, however, has announced that presidential elections will hold before electing parliament. Opponents have criticized the announcement, saying it risks creating a president with unchecked power. Over in Libya, security remains the main challenge. 5 Egyptian embassy staff were kidnapped from their homes between Friday and Saturday, but they were released on Monday. Since the demise of Muammar Gaddafi, there's been a rise in militancy, and foreigners have been the target of kidnaps and arrests. Cairo evacuated its diplomatic missions in Tripoli and Benghazi following a couple of abductions which have been blamed on the Libya Revolution's Operations Room, one of the militias that emerged during the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi. Well, I spoke briefly with Professor Isaac Mbacha of the Nigeria Defense Academy on the Arab Spring. He's been following closely what's been going on. He says he's not surprised at all how slowly these countries are progressing, trying to find new leadership, but he seems to have predicted Syria's present situation at the start of the crisis.
Every revolution, more often than not, springs surprises and sometimes even corrupt the ideal of the revolutionists and sometimes even consume the revolutionists. What happened? I wouldn't say that is so far so bad. No, but it will take a very long time. In some cases, 10 years for the political situation to normalize properly. So it's always like that with every revolution, be it French Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, Iranian Revolution. Revolution at the beginning is always disastrous. But as time goes on, it will normalize, and people will learn lessons from their mistakes.
In other words, you're saying that what the first three countries I mentioned, that's Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, what they're probably going through now, despite the disadvantages, is growing pains.
Yeah, that is what we call the pangs of revolution. It cannot be just an easy ride. Things will not just normalize overnight. A revolution is not an evolution. That is why in political engineering, we normally prefer evolutionary process and revolutionary process. Every revolution brings its own dislocation, its own pains, its own disappointments. But we're not saying that it is bad. It is not bad because at the long run, these countries will be better off. But the next 5 years to 10 years, things will be actually rough for them because they have to adjust and also implement democratization that is actually the end product of every revolution.
So how would you describe what's going on in Syria? Because, I mean, at first we thought it was an uprising. It still is. I mean, if you look at it, it still is an uprising. But could you also define that as a revolution, though nothing is really changing?
Thank you very much. If you could remember, Marachi, about 2 years ago, I told you that the Syrian crisis has entered into final stage. And I cannot describe what is happening in Syria as a revolution. What is happening in Syria is serious insurgency that metamorphosed into a civil war now. This is not a revolution. It is not a revolution at all. This is a serious insurgency that has actually graduated into serious civil war. So it can never be equated or called a revolution. What is happening in Syria is an anomaly. It's a serious case. It's not like what happened in Egypt or what happened in Libya or what happened in Tunisia. It's far from those. It's even far from what happened in Iran in 1979. What is happening in Syria now is outright civil war. And I told you 2 years ago that the insurgency at that time has entered into the final stage, which is civil war. Unfortunately, Al-Qaeda and the terrorists hijacked the whole thing, and again, worsened by the support from the West. Because ask yourself, these people, where do they get their weapons? Where do they get the heavy weapons? I mean, the insurgents. That is the question to be asked. So it is an outright civil war. It's not a revolution at all.
That's the program this week. You can catch up on other editions of Diplomatic Channel on youtube.com/channels web. Join the conversation on our page on Facebook or start one of your own. Your comments are always welcome using any of these media. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.